The polished halls of the National STEM Expo rested on two quiet assumptions: that a black teen claiming his father worked for the Pentagon was lying, and that elite institutions were somehow safe from the chaos beyond their curated walls. Both illusions crumbled in real time, because when Marcus Talley, a black man, stepped into that building, he wasn't wearing a name tag or pushing a mop. He didn't come as a volunteer, a stagehand, or someone's plus one. He walked in as the mind behind classified defense protocols, as the man whose silence once secured nations. And he didn't step forward to prove a point when the live feed crashed and the system fell under siege. He stepped forward to neutralize the breach, right there, in front of every judge who scoffed, every parent who whispered, and every sponsor who looked past his son's name on the list. Jalen didn't speak as it happened. He just watched, from the shadows of humiliation to the center of vindication. Not because he needed the applause, but because he needed them to see what they almost erased. His father didn't just walk into the room. He walked through the firewall of their disbelief, wearing clearance levels they couldn't even imagine. And suddenly, the only question wasn't whether the boy belonged. It was whether they were ready for the world he came from. I'd love to know where you're watching from today, Stasha. And if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow's special episode is one you don't want to miss. They say the most challenging part of showing up is just showing up. But that's not true if you're a 15-year-old black kid walking into a room where nobody expects you to be. Jalen had been up since 5 a.m. that morning to iron the sleeves of his only button-down shirt, but the family's old iron had finally given up the ghost last week, and his mom, working the early shift at St. Luke's, didn't have time to buy another. But Jalen didn't complain. He just made do. That's how it always was in the Talley household. You made do until you made it better. The National Future Innovators STEM Expo was held in a convention center 3 train stops and a half-mile walk away. Jalen had never seen so many lanyards in his life. Kids buzzed around in matching team shirts, pulling wheeled display boards and tapping away at tablets like they were launching satellites. You could smell money in the air. Not the kind that folds, the type that gets passed down. Jalen didn't have a booth buddy or a rolling setup. He walked in with a slightly torn duffel bag, one trifold presentation board wrapped in an old pillowcase, and a refurbished laptop held together with hope, duct tape, and a father who taught him more with silence than some folks do with PhDs. He checked in at the front table. The girl working registration raised an eyebrow when she saw his name. Department 5 Alpha? You sure that's not a typo? He nodded quietly. My dad submitted it. It's correct. She gave a tight-lipped smile and handed him his badge. It was missing the gold security stripe the other competitors had. He noticed, but he didn't say anything. Jalen made his way to the far corner of the exhibit hall, booth 192. His table was wedged between 2 private school teams wearing embroidered jackets and setting up augmented reality displays with 3D printed drones. One of them, a tall kid with gelled hair and expensive braces, leaned over and glanced at Jalen's project. Yo, what is that? Looks like a broken VCR. Jalen smiled politely. It's a custom-coded predictive threat scanner. Flags system breaches before they hit the firewall. The other kid laughed. Chill, you built that? Or your cousin did it for you? Jalen turned back to his setup. He'd heard that kind of tone before. Polite on paper, sharp underneath. The kind of voice that says, prove it, before you've even opened your mouth. When it was time for presentations, the judges worked their way down the rows in crisp blazers and fake interest. By the time they reached Jalen, their smiles were stretched thin. He stood up, clicked his laptop awake, and launched into the script he'd practiced a dozen times in front of his bedroom mirror. My name is Jalen Talley. My project is a partnership between myself and my father, Marcus Talley. He works in Pentagon cybersecurity. Together, we developed a scanning system that identifies, hold on, one of the judges, middle-aged, gray suit, that kind of boldness that screams committee chairman, tilted his head. Did you say Pentagon? Jalen nodded. Yes, sir. And what exactly does your father do at the Pentagon? His tone was laced with something more than curiosity. He's a national threat analyst, cyber division. The judge smirked. Another leaned in. That's quite the claim. Did he drop you off in a tank this morning too? A few kids nearby chuckled. Jalen's hand tightened around the edge of the table, but he didn't break. No, sir. He took the train, same as me. And this code, a third judge gestured at the screen. You built it? All of it? Jalen clicked on the source files, but the judge waved it off before even looking. We'll need to verify the originality of this. You understand, plagiarism's a serious issue. And just like that, they weren't evaluating his work. They were evaluating him. A woman with a walkie-talkie whispered something to the lead judge. He nodded, then turned back. We're going to pause this review for now. Something's come up. Please wait here. Jalen watched as the judges walked away laughing, toward a team wearing MIT hoodies and a 6-monitor setup. He stood there for a moment, alone, in front of his project, heart pounding. Then he looked down at his badge. It had gone from green to flashing red. Access revoked. No warning, no explanation. Just like that, they erased him. Jalen Talley didn't learn tech from school books. He learned it from sitting shoulder to shoulder with his father at the kitchen table, piecing together broken machines they pulled from alley bins and backroom piles. While other kids spent their weekends gaming, Jalen was learning how to reverse engineer motherboards with tweezers and a magnifying lamp. Marcus Talley never believed in store-bought education. He believed in problem-solving with your hands and backing up your words with results. The first thing he ever told Jalen when they started rebuilding an old Dell laptop was this. Don't brag, son. Let 'em doubt you. But when the time comes, make sure your work talks back. Jalen remembered that now, because nothing else made sense. He was sitting alone in a back room at the STEM Expo, locked out of his project booth with no explanation. His badge had been remotely disabled. His name was removed from the leaderboards, and nobody from the organizing team had said a single word since they pulled him out of the main hall. The room was intentionally sterile. White walls, plastic chair, frosted glass window that blurred the world outside. They hadn't even let him shut down the program he was running, an AI threat detection model trained to respond to real-time cyber attacks. He'd spent 6 months building it, line by line, error by error. It didn't just work, it outperformed the senior division. He waited 42 minutes before anyone entered. A man in his 40s stepped in. Event blazer, polished shoes, expensive watch. He didn't introduce himself. He sat across from Jalen and began the conversation with a fake sense of calm. We reviewed your submission. Your project, while very ambitious, has raised concerns. The code base doesn't align with your listed education level, and your application references a Department of Defense affiliation that we can't verify. Jalen kept his eyes steady. My father works in defense cybersecurity. I've built this with him for over a year. The man leaned forward. We're asking you to be honest. Did you write this code on your own? Yes. You didn't copy it? No. Then how do you explain the complexity? This algorithm mirrors military threat triage architecture. That's not typically accessible to students. The man tilted his head slightly, then smiled in a way that confirmed he hadn't heard a word Jalen said. So you're claiming your father works at the Pentagon and helped you design national security-grade software at home? Yes. What division? That's classified. The man gave a quiet laugh and leaned back in his chair. We're going to recommend the removal of your submission. If we find evidence of misrepresentation, you could be permanently banned from future competitions. Jalen stood up, calmly. You can ban me. Just make sure you check your network logs before you do. The man blinked, confused. Why? Because you're not offline. You're breached. Your livestream server has been mirroring IP traffic since 8:36 a.m. My code flagged it before you shut me out. That's not possible. The breach is embedded in your metadata, and the first trigger happened through a judge's terminal. That's your real problem, not me. The man didn't speak after that. He left the room without responding. Jalen stood alone by the window. He didn't need to see clearly through the frosted glass. He already knew what was outside. The STEM National Finals were being streamed live on YouTube to over 48,000 viewers. Parents tuned in from hotel lobbies. Classmates followed the leaderboards from mobile phones. Even sponsors were watching in real time, hoping to catch the next prodigy they could fund before MIT did. On stage, the host read from the teleprompter with perfect posture and a memorized smile. And now, Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to announce this year's winning project, selected by a unanimous vote from our judging committee. The lights dimmed. The logo pulsed across the giant LED screen. Background music swelled, then the screen glitched. A single stutter at first, then a sharp flicker, then static. The host froze mid-sentence as the entire feed stuttered again. The live stream audience saw it before the crowd did. A flashing red warning overtook the broadcast window. Potential breach detected. System lockdown initiated. Inside the auditorium, the music stopped. The lights sputtered, then silence. The tech director sprinted onto the stage with a headset and a panic in his voice that couldn't be masked by professionalism. "This is a ransomware attack." The sound tech yanked cables. The judges huddled behind the control desk. Confused parents stood up in their seats. The event was collapsing in real time, and there was no fallback plan. The head judge, Dr. Stanton, the same man who interrogated Jalen hours earlier, grabbed a microphone and addressed the crowd without waiting for approval. "We are experiencing technical difficulties due to a malicious entry in our software pipeline. One of the submissions contained an unauthorized diagnostic code that triggered a live vulnerability scan. We believe this breach was unintended, but careless." He didn't name names at first. But then he stepped closer to the center of the stage, his voice tightening. "The project in question originated from a student named Jalen Talley. He's no longer participating in this competition." The murmur in the crowd escalated. Some gasped, some clapped, some whispered the word hacker with either fear or awe. Jalen wasn't in the room to defend himself. He had never even touched their core systems. But now, in front of thousands of viewers, they'd painted a target on him. And they didn't stop there. Another judge stepped up, Dr. Lin, head of the cybersecurity committee. "It's likely the student ran a recursive scanner. Maybe he didn't understand the protocol depth. It was probably an accident. Either way, his entry will be disqualified and we're shutting down the awards." Then came the moment no one expected. In the third row, a laptop that had been off for hours lit up. It belonged to Jalen, the same device he carried everywhere, the one they hadn't let him retrieve from the booth. No hands touched it, no cables were plugged in. The screen came to life on its own. First, a black window. Then, a single line of code began to type, slowly, but with intent. It wasn't a virus, it was a command. It bypassed the login, overrode the lockdown. Then the speakers hummed to life across the auditorium, intercepting the system's soundboard without permission. The voice that came through was deep, steady, and unmistakably real. "This is Julius Talley, former DoD Tier 1 counter-operations." Gasps echoed across the auditorium. On screen, his name appeared in red over the system's terminal window. "You're under a real-time cyber breach, confirmed by multiple packet patterns routed through this venue's uplink." The judges turned pale. The tech crew froze. "You're not being attacked because of my son's project. You're being attacked because you built your showcase on outdated security and ignored his warning." Dr. Stanton stepped forward, speaking into a dead microphone. "Who is this? What kind of stunt?" The voice cut him off mid-sentence. "I wrote the architecture your firewall still uses, version 3.728, deployed to 6 DoD facilities and phased out 5 years ago. You never updated, you never patched, and now you're blaming a child for your negligence." Silence followed. Then the voice returned, calm but firm. "You want to solve this before your entire database becomes public? Let my son back in." In the back row, a young coder who knew exactly what just happened leaned over to his friend and whispered, "They didn't just get hacked, they got warned." And then, without any countdown or transition, all the lights in the auditorium went black. Every spotlight, every LED, every emergency exit sign. Gone. When the auditorium lights came back on, they didn't come with relief, they came with reckoning. A wall of FBI agents entered the venue through the east loading doors. Quiet, fast, and fully armed. Nobody announced them. They didn't need to. They spread through the venue with the kind of practiced precision that didn't need explanation. Marcus Talley stepped into the aisle with steady steps and silent authority. He wasn't flanked by bodyguards. He wasn't escorted. But the moment people saw his face and his Pentagon-issued credentials, they made space. Jalen walked beside him. They climbed the stage together, father and son, and took the mic without asking. Marcus didn't pause to dramatize the moment. He didn't clear his throat or wait for silence. He spoke because time mattered and because everyone in that room needed to hear the truth without spin. My name is Marcus Talley. I'm a Tier 1 counter-cyber operations specialist with the Department of Defense. My son didn't cause this breach. He caught it. A murmur swept through the auditorium. People turned to each other, some confused, some ashamed. But Marcus didn't give them room to spiral. He kept speaking, firmly and clearly. Jalen's diagnostic program didn't hack your system. It flagged an unknown signal buried in your outbound streaming servers. That signal was encrypted and routed through 4 countries before landing in your child registration data. That's what triggered the lockdown. He gestured to the screen behind him. With a tap from his tablet, it came to life. This time not with glitching graphics or brand logos, but with something far more undeniable. Security footage. Time-stamped. Clean. Unedited. They saw a man in an event crew uniform, neutral vest, name badge, headset, enter the expo through the back service door at 6:12 a.m., 2 hours before doors opened to the public. He bypassed the normal sign-in procedures. He didn't go to the tech desk or report to any team leads. Instead, he slipped into the master control room. Less than 5 minutes later, the server logs showed a maintenance patch uploaded to the core firewall under root credentials. Jalen's program caught that signature during his routine scan because it didn't match any known developer key. This wasn't about science fair trophies, Marcus said, voice like steel. This wasn't about academic fraud or teenagers showing off. He looked directly at the rows of parents, the judges, and the staff. This was about access to your children, to their devices, to their homes. He continued, voice rising just enough to cut through every last pocket of doubt. This event required every student to register their school email, personal contact, parent information, and device sync. That server wasn't the target. Your kids were, their logins, their home routers, their metadata. The breach was the delivery system. The prize wasn't the medal. It was everything connected to it. He pointed back at the screen again. You were infiltrated by someone wearing your badge. 4th row. End seat. One of the AV techs, the same man who'd been adjusting microphones and cables just an hour ago, stood up slowly and started walking toward the side door. He just tried to slip away. But 2 agents moved at once, one from the side, one from the center aisle. They intercepted him before he made it halfway to the exit. Sir, we need to see your credentials. He reached for his badge but hesitated. The agent pulled it for him. One scan. No match. Another agent unzipped his backpack. Inside, a signal disruptor, a military-grade flash drive, and a burner phone running an overseas network. The arrest was immediate. No yelling. No struggle. Just zip ties and rights read in clear, calm voices. Marcus stepped back from the mic and turned to his son. He turned slowly, looked at Marcus and said, "This wasn't a one-man job. There's a second device still broadcasting, and it's not in the building." Marcus nodded once. Then we're not done. The STEM stage, once filled with cheap applause and hollow praise, had gone quiet. No music, no teleprompter, no grinning host guiding the audience toward a feel-good wrap-up. Just one mic, one spotlight, one kid they all tried to discredit. Jalen Talley stepped forward without hesitation. He didn't check his notes. He didn't need to. He wasn't up there for a speech. He was up there for a truth that everybody in that auditorium needed to hear, whether they were ready or not. He adjusted the mic. His fingers didn't tremble this time. He looked straight ahead, straight into the eyes of people who had once laughed, doubted, and dismissed him. Y'all thought I didn't belong. His voice was clear. His tone didn't beg. It stated. You thought I made it up. Thought I was just a kid pretending to be something I'm not. Thought I came here to play smart. He paused, not for drama, but because every word mattered. He wanted them to feel it, not just hear it. But my dad's been saving lives since before I was born. He pointed toward the back of the auditorium, not with a shaky hand, but with pride. He doesn't wear medals, doesn't ask for credit. He just shows up, solves problems, and disappears before you even know something was wrong. People turned in their seats, eyes finding Marcus Talley standing at the rear wall, arms folded, expression unreadable, but present. Watching. Always watching. And all I wanted, Jalen continued, was to make him proud. You could feel it then. The shift in the room. The same parents who looked past him now leaned forward in their seats. The same judges who questioned his ability now looked down, unable to meet his gaze. But Jalen didn't speak for pity. He wasn't there to apologize. He always told me, "Don't try to prove yourself with your mouth. Let your work talk back." Well, today, I let it scream. That last line didn't hang in the air. It punched through it. And when the crowd erupted, it wasn't performative. It was real. The standing ovation wasn't led by a judge. It happened because nobody in that building could pretend anymore. They'd seen the breach. They'd watched the footage. They'd heard Marcus Talley's voice take over the system like a force of nature. Jalen had been telling the truth from the start, and in a room built to celebrate the future of technology, the future just reminded them what integrity sounds like. Jalen finished his speech. No final line. No rehearsed quote, just a nod to the crowd, and he stepped down. As he walked toward the steps, one of the judges, Dr. Stanton, the same man who tried to frame his code as a threat, stepped forward with an outstretched hand. "Jalen," he said, trying to smile, "you were extraordinary." Jalen looked at him. He walked right past that outstretched hand, through the split crowd, down the aisle, and straight into his father's arms. Marcus pulled Jalen close, firm, quiet, and spoke so only his son could hear. "Let them watch us now. They'll learn today." They stood there, just the two of them, while the applause roared behind them. Outside, camera crews tried to push past barricades. Reporters shouted questions. Headlines were already trending. But inside the Talley SUV, everything was still. Jalen sat beside his father, staring out the window as the sun dipped over the city skyline. His badge hung around his neck. His laptop, finally returned, sat powered down in his lap. Marcus glanced over and said, "You good?" Jalen nodded once. "Yeah." "Next time they doubt you, what are you gonna do?" Jalen looked down at his laptop. "Let my work talk." Marcus smiled. "That's my boy." And they drove off. No red carpet, no trophy. Just a father and son with nothing left to prove. Because in the end, the world finally saw them for what they'd always been. Undeniable. Smash that like button if this story hits close to home. Especially if someone ever doubted your family's worth. More stories are coming. Real ones. Subscribe and stay tuned.